From the outside, Esther looked like the perfect university girl. Smart, beautiful, confident. The kind of girl every lecturer noticed for her intelligence, and every student noticed for her beauty. Whenever she walked across the campus walkway, heads would slowly turn. Not because she demanded attention, but because attention naturally followed her. Her clothes were always clean, her hair always neatly styled, her voice calm, her smile warm. To anyone watching from a distance, Esther looked like a young woman whose future was already shining bright. But sometimes, the brightest lights hide the darkest shadows. Because when night fell over the university town, when lectures ended, when hostel gates slowly closed, Esther's life began to change. And she was not alone. 2 other girls always followed her, Precious and Favour. The 3 of them had become famous across campus as inseparable friends. Where one appeared, the other 2 were never far away. Precious was the bold one. She had a loud personality and loved attention. Her laughter could easily fill an entire room. She enjoyed fashion and makeup, and she loved being the center of every conversation. Favour was different. Quiet, observant, mysterious. She spoke less than the other 2, but always seemed to be thinking deeply. While Precious attracted attention with her energy, Favour attracted attention with her silence. Together with Esther, the 3 girls formed a friendship that many people admired. Some girls envied them. Some boys tried desperately to impress them. But the 3 friends seemed to exist inside their own small world, a world that nobody else fully understood. The rumors began quietly. A security guard at the university gate noticed something strange. Sometimes, very late at night, a black SUV would stop outside the campus. A driver would step out, and a few minutes later, Esther, Precious, and Favour would appear. The girls would enter the vehicle, then the car would disappear into the night. At first, the guard ignored it. University students often had different lifestyles, but something about the situation felt unusual. Because the car always arrived after midnight, and the girls always returned just before dawn. One night, curiosity overcame the guard. As the girls walked past him toward the waiting SUV, he spoke gently. "Where are you girls going at this hour?" Precious smiled, a confident smile. "Just going out for fresh air, uncle." The guard looked at them carefully. Then he shook his head slowly. "You young people, be careful out there." The girls laughed softly, but none of them answered. They simply entered the car and disappeared again into the darkness. Away from the quiet university environment, another world existed. A world of loud music, bright lights, luxury restaurants, private parties, and wealthy men who enjoyed spending money. This was the world Esther and her friends entered after midnight. Inside those expensive environments, they were no longer ordinary university students. They became something else, something more glamorous, more exciting, more dangerous. People in those places admired beauty, and Esther, Precious, and Favour were impossible to ignore. Men bought drinks, expensive food appeared on tables, money moved quietly from one hand to another. To outsiders, it looked like fun, excitement, freedom. But every lifestyle has consequences, and the deeper the girls entered that hidden world, the harder it would become to escape. One semester, a new student arrived at the university. His name was Daniel. Daniel came from a modest background. His parents were farmers from a small rural town. But Daniel was intelligent, hardworking, disciplined. He received a scholarship that allowed him to study accounting at Eastbridge University. Unlike many students who enjoyed campus distractions, Daniel focused mostly on his books. His goal was simple: graduate with excellent grades, change his family's life. But sometimes, life places people in situations they never expected. One afternoon, while walking toward the library, Daniel saw Esther first time. She was standing under a large tree near the faculty building. The sunlight moved gently through the leaves above her, and for a moment, Daniel stopped walking. Something about her presence caught his attention immediately. Not just her beauty, but the calm confidence she carried. He did not know it yet, but that moment would slowly pull him into a story far more complicated than he could imagine. And Esther's double life was about to become even more dangerous. Daniel had never considered himself the type of person who easily became distracted. For most of his life, discipline had been the rule that guided everything he did. Growing up in a small farming community had taught him early that life rarely handed people opportunities freely. If he wanted something, he had to earn it. And education was the one opportunity he believed could change his entire future. That belief was the reason he found himself at Eastbridge University. The campus itself was beautiful. Wide walkways shaded by tall trees, students moving between lecture halls, voices blending together in a constant background hum of conversations, laughter, and occasional arguments. For many students, university life meant freedom. Freedom to explore, freedom to experiment, freedom to live beyond the rules of their parents' homes. But for Daniel, university meant something else entirely: responsibility. Every day, he reminded himself that someone back home was sacrificing for his success. His parents worked long hours in their fields under the scorching sun. His younger siblings looked up to him as the one who would open the door to a better future. Failure was not an option. So when he first noticed Esther standing beneath the large mango tree near the mass communication building, he didn't intend to stare. But something about her presence slowed his steps. She stood with quiet elegance, scrolling through her phone while waiting for someone. The afternoon sunlight caught the edges of her braided hair, creating a soft glow around her face. Students walked past her constantly, yet she seemed strangely separate from the movement around her. Calm, unbothered, composed. Daniel quickly looked away. He continued walking toward the library, shaking his head slightly as if reminding himself of his priorities. But sometimes, the smallest moments plant seeds we don't immediately recognize. And that brief glance would eventually change more lives than Daniel could imagine. Across campus, the friendship between Esther, Precious, and Favour had become something of a small legend. First-year students quickly noticed them. Second-year students often talked about them. Even some lecturers recognized the trio whenever they walked into lecture halls together. They always appeared coordinated without trying. Their outfits stylish but never identical. Their conversations lively. Their confidence almost effortless. To outsiders, their friendship looked like the kind people hope to find during university life. But for friendships are rarely as simple as they appear. Behind every bond lies unspoken agreements, shared secrets, hidden loyalties. The three girls had known each other since their first semester. They met during orientation week when the campus was still new and overwhelming. Precious was the first to approach Esther. She had an instinctive ability to read people quickly. When she saw Esther sitting alone in the orientation hall, she walked straight toward her. "Are you new here too?" she asked with a bright smile. Esther nodded. Precious immediately sat beside her. Within minutes, they were talking as if they had known each other for years. Favour joined them shortly after. Unlike Precious, she didn't speak much at first. She simply listened carefully, observing both girls with thoughtful eyes. That afternoon became the beginning of a friendship that would slowly shape their futures. At first, their lives were simple. Lectures, assignments, hostel gossip, late-night study sessions, normal student experiences. But everything began to change during their second year. That was when the first invitation arrived, an invitation that opened the door to a completely different world. It started with a birthday party. One of Precious's distant acquaintances invited her to a private celebration at an upscale lounge in the city. The place was far beyond the budget of typical university students. Luxury cars lined the entrance, security guards stood at the doors. Inside, the environment felt like something from a completely different universe. Soft golden lights, elegant music, well-dressed guests laughing and drinking. Precious had never experienced anything like it. When she returned to campus that night, excitement filled every word she spoke. "You won't believe the place I went tonight," she told Esther and Favour. They were sitting in their hostel room. Esther listened quietly. Favour leaned against the wall, observing. Precious described everything. The food, the music, the people, and most importantly, the men. Successful businessmen, entrepreneurs, people who spent money as if it meant nothing. "These guys treat women like queens," Precious said enthusiastically. Esther raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Precious smiled knowingly. "I mean, they like beautiful company." Favour finally spoke. "And what do they expect in return?" Precious shrugged casually. "Just companionship." The room fell silent. Each girl considered the idea in her own way. None of them realized that moment marked the beginning of a path that would slowly reshape their lives. The first time Esther agreed to go out with Precious and Favour to one of those exclusive gatherings, she told herself it was just curiosity, nothing more. They dressed carefully that evening. Precious chose a bright red dress that immediately attracted attention. Favour wore something elegant but understated. Esther selected a black dress that highlighted her natural grace. When they arrived at the restaurant, the atmosphere felt almost unreal. The tables were covered with white cloth, soft piano music played in the background. Every guest looked important, successful, powerful. The man who invited them introduced himself simply as Mr. Roland. He appeared to be in his early 40s, confident, well-spoken, the type of man who seemed comfortable in every environment. Throughout the evening, he entertained them with stories about business, travel, and opportunities. He ordered expensive food without hesitation. Every time the girls hesitated to choose something from the menu, he encouraged them warmly. "Don't worry about the price," he said with a smile. "Enjoy yourselves." For Esther, the evening felt strange. Part of her enjoyed the experience, but another part felt uneasy. She couldn't explain exactly why. Maybe it was the attention, maybe it was the quiet expectations hidden beneath the generosity. But when the night ended and the girls returned to campus, something had shifted. They had seen a world that offered luxury far beyond ordinary student life, and curiosity had already begun turning into the gradual change. At first, the outings happened occasionally, once every few weeks, then once every week. Eventually, the invitations became more frequent. Each experience seemed more exciting than the last. Luxury hotels, private clubs, exclusive events. The girls began receiving gifts, phones, clothes, expensive accessories, money. Slowly, their lifestyle changed. Their wardrobes improved. Their confidence increased. On campus, people noticed the difference. Students began whispering more often. How do they afford all those things? Who are they always meeting outside campus? Rumors spread quietly. But Esther, Precious, and Favour never addressed them. They simply continued living their lives. However, the deeper they entered that hidden world, the more complicated everything became. Because the men they met were not simply generous strangers. They were individuals used to getting what they wanted. And generosity often came with expectations. Weeks passed after Daniel first saw Esther. Eventually, their paths crossed again in a lecture hall. She sat 2 rows ahead of him during a communication theory class. Daniel noticed something unusual. Esther paid attention during lectures. She took notes carefully. She answered questions when the lecturer called on students. Nothing about her academic behavior suggested someone careless or irresponsible. Yet, rumors about her lifestyle continued spreading across campus. Daniel tried to ignore the gossip. People often exaggerate stories about others. But one evening, something happened that made him pause. He was returning from the library after a long study session. The campus walkway was almost empty. And as he approached the hostel area, he saw a black SUV parked near the gate. 3 familiar figures stood nearby: Esther, Precious, and Favour. They looked different from their usual daytime appearance. Their clothes were more glamorous, their expressions more confident. The car door opened, the girls entered, and within seconds, the vehicle disappeared down the road. Daniel stood still for a moment. Confusion crossed his mind. Why would they be leaving campus at that hour? He tried to dismiss the thought, but curiosity had already begun growing quietly. 2 weeks later, fate created another unexpected moment. Daniel was sitting alone in the university cafe late one evening. Most students had already returned to their hostels. Only a few remained scattered around the room. As he reviewed his notes, someone approached the counter. Daniel looked up briefly. It was Esther. She appeared tired, not physically exhausted, but mentally distracted. She ordered a cup of tea and sat at a nearby table. For several minutes, they remained silent strangers sharing the same quiet space. Then something unusual happened. Esther accidentally dropped her phone. It slid across the floor toward Daniel. He picked it up and handed it back. "Here you go." Esther smiled gently. "Thank you." Their eyes met briefly. For the first time, Daniel noticed something deeper in her expression. Not arrogance, not pride. Something else. Something almost like hidden sadness. She hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "You're in my communication theory class, right?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." She said, "I've seen you taking notes every lecture. You must be very serious about your studies." Daniel shrugged slightly. "I try." She smiled again, but this time the smile looked more genuine. For several minutes, they talked casually about classes, assignments, and campus life. It was a simple conversation, normal, unexpectedly comfortable. Yet, neither of them realized how important that small interaction would become. Because slowly, Daniel was about to step closer to Esther's world, and Esther's carefully balanced double life was about to face its first real challenge.